originally wrote this script, the video was about GTA 6 and the possibility of us getting $100 games. After yesterday's news from Nintendo, it looks like that's where we're headed as an industry. And it wasn't Rockstar that led the way, it was actually Nintendo. So we have to talk. It's one of those talks. So let's light this candle. Let's get into it. It's no longer a rumor. Looks like it's true. The price of games are going up. Rockstar was rumored to have Grand Theft Auto 6 slated to cost $99.99. People doubted it. Industry analysts were saying it would probably be around $80, and it looks like the analysts were right. But it's Nintendo. They showed some of their games, and while we were all excited, they crept away and didn't tell us about pricing. A little bit later, some big retailers started showing off their pricing list, and while some games are $69.99, we saw others like Tears of the Kingdom for the Switch 2 listed at $79.99, and we saw Mario Kart World listed at $79.99. So now many of us are wondering, should we be paying this much for a standard game? And I say this without any uncertainty, without any doubt, absolutely not. But many of the other publishers in the gaming industry are hoping we do. Game development is expensive. There's no way around it. And when sales numbers don't hit, we see studio closures, layoffs, game cancellations. It's really heartbreaking. Farwalk Studios is a prime example. The team behind Concord, they missed their sales target, released to mixed reviews, and 2 weeks after the game's release, the studio was shut down, the game was shut down. Then there's Tango Gameworks' story, a studio filled with brilliant developers who gave us Hi-Fi Rush, an innovative game that mixed rhythm with action. It was a delight to look at, featuring bright, infectious visuals and tight controls. The game released and received incredible review scores and went on to win several gaming awards around audio and animation, but that didn't save the studio. It failed to hit its sales targets, the studio was shuttered, and ironically, the game ends up releasing on the PS5. Some were saying that Grand Theft Auto 6 might launch at $99.99, and now I think it's more probable. Now that Nintendo's shown its hand, and we know that games are going to cost $79.99 before tax or even shipping if you buy online, we're coming close to $90. And let's be real, if Nintendo does it, others will probably follow. But here's my full take. Games hitting the $80 mark, $90 or even $100 is unnecessary. The industry is thriving, raking in more money than ever before. And while we discuss this today, we're not even going to touch mobile gaming, which just sends the number into an astronomical value. We'll leave that out of this conversation. Despite the rising development costs and the closure of some studios, the gaming industry isn't struggling. Not even close. Sure, in 2024, console gaming revenue dipped by 4%. It went from $52 billion to, wait for it, a sad, meager $50.3 billion. Yeah. Meanwhile, PC gaming only dropped from $41.6 billion to $41.5 billion, a less than 0.2% loss. This minor decline likely reflects a quieter release schedule in 2024. Remember, 2023 was packed with games like Tears of the Kingdom, Baldur's Gate 3, Spider-Man 2, Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, and Starfield. 2024, not to say that it was bad, but we got Wukong, Helldivers 2, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and Astrobot as the big heaters. Analysts are actually predicting a bigger 2025 than both 2023 and 2024. And I believe it now that we know the Switch 2 is releasing and we're getting Grand Theft Auto 6. It's easy to see it happening. So all over social media today, the most common counterpoint I've seen from older gamers like me is, well, games were expensive in the 90s. And that's true. I remember those days. My family wasn't exactly rolling in cash, so I had to carefully pick out one or two games for birthdays or Christmas. If I was really lucky, maybe I'd get another one for good grades. Gaming has never been a poor man's hobby. I get that. Back then, Genesis and Super Nintendo games ranged from $40 to $70. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $85 to $170 today. But here's the thing. That comparison assumes wages and the cost of living have increased in a 1-to-1 ratio. That is further from the truth. The data is clear. Wages have stagnated while the cost of living has skyrocketed. In some parts of the country, people still make $7.25 an hour. That's unchanged from 12 years ago. Growing up in the Bronx, I saw this firsthand. For most families in my neighborhood, new games were a luxury, something reserved for the special occasions. But it almost feels like there were more options for deals back then.
Got that puppy from NFL Blitz. Oh yeah. Played WCW for 12 hours. Just kind of stayed that way.
Amateurs rented games from Blockbuster 5 days straight.
Are you gaming up? Blockbuster has more copies of new releases than ever.
One thing my mom knew how to do was shop around. We would hit up pawn shops. We would hit up Funkoland. Y'all remember that, right? We'd wait for sales at Toys R Us. I feel like we just had way more options back then than we do now. If you know, you know. Unlike GameStop, Funkoland felt honest. You'd walk in with $20 and you could leave with a stack of games. They weren't the latest and greatest, but you'd leave with something. So at Funkoland, they treated games like the stock market. You'd go in every week and prices would change. You would even get like this huge paper with all the prices, price changes. You could find a deal at Funkoland. If you had one near you, it felt like walking into a gold mine. And then there was Blockbuster or local rental stores. I remember Star Search Video in the Bronx, the Hollywood Videos in Queens. There were a few places, and those were literally game changers. You could try out a new game for a few bucks, beat a shorter one over the weekend, or test an RPG before committing to a purchase. I did it all the time. Honestly, if it wasn't for rental stores, I would buy a lot of bad games. I would have bought a lot of bad games. In the 90s, it felt like we had so many options to offset the price of games. Look at the PS1 and the PS2. We had PlayStation Hits. It was a program designed to bring the best-selling PS1 and PS2 games at more than half the price. So after a year or so, you would see a game like Twisted Metal 2 selling for $15, $20. So these days, we know things are a bit different. Most of the console revenue, analysts saying about 70 to 80% of it, comes from digital sales. So that means companies are no longer making manuals, cases, disc, or shipping out product. So why are digital games costing the same amount as physical ones? So you would think that with the push to digital, that some of these cost savings would be pushed down to us, the consumer, but that really hasn't been the case. Digital games still cost as much as their physical counterparts. Even the most premium edition of games are now without physical disc. Death Stranding 2's release date reveal left many wondering why a $230 collector's edition was missing the disc. The same happened with God of War Ragnarok, which included a steel case, but again, no physical disc. And yes, I know I'm going off on a minor tangent, but it's important to see the correlation with the rising cost of games versus the value us, the gamers, are receiving. It's frustrating. Companies keep finding ways to save money, but those savings never get passed on to us, the customers. My bigger issue is that you never pay for a game just once these days. Look at one of my favorite genres, fighting games. Street Fighter 6 was $60 at launch, and today to get the full experience you have to spend another $60. So $120 all in unless you buy the game on sale. Then there's Tekken 8, $70 at launch, and to get the full Tekken 8 experience you got to spend an additional $40. So that's $110 for Tekken 8. And then we get hit with microtransactions and skins. Look at Fortnite and Call of Duty. They're pumping out skins like candy. How can companies justify a $100 price tag while also hitting us with loot boxes, season passes, skins, and the whole games as a service model? A model that encourages folks to spend more for content. A model that I believe has stifled creativity. And while we're on the subject of creativity, there's a bigger issue that many of us are not fully understanding yet. AI. So AI has been a big topic in the news, and if you haven't been keeping up with gaming news, I'll fill you in. A few weeks ago, The Verge discovered that Guerrilla Games was toying with AI voice acting. And Ashley Burke, the voice actor of Aloy from Horizon, voiced some concerns.
Hi. I wanted to talk about AI Aloy. I feel worried. And not worried about Guerrilla specifically or Horizon or my performance or my career specifically, even. I feel worried about this art form, game performance as an art form. We are currently on strike. SAG-AFTRA is on strike against video games because of AI.
The leak demo showed an AI alloy having a conversation with a Sony engineer. It was an AI performance that, although not very sophisticated, it showed where the technology was headed. And this is coming from someone that works in tech. Most companies are trying to implement AI to cut on costs. And I'll be fully transparent. I've been using AI every day for the last year or so. I use it at work, I use it at home. It's a tool, but the big emphasis should be on the word tool. There's no reason AI should be replacing humans. AI doesn't come close to touching the nuance of human emotion and creativity. It's a tool. It's heart to heart. I put out a video early on when I started the channel that was called The Worst Gaming Generation. And seeing $80 price tags and rumors of $100 price tags for games really makes me feel like that's where we're in. We're in the middle of that. I won't stand on a high horse and say, hey, I'm not going to buy the games, because I am. I know who I am. I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford an $80 Mario Kart. I'm fortunate enough to be able to afford a $100 Grand Theft Auto. But I start thinking about the single moms, the single parents, and I start thinking about the less fortunate gamers out there, because there's a lot of us. I used to be that guy. I used to be that kid. How do we justify that for them? How is that even something remotely possible? And before you jump on here and start screaming, well, it's a luxury item. So just because you're poor or don't have as much money as someone else, you're not allowed to enjoy yourself. You're not allowed to experience some of these great stories, these games. If that was the case, we wouldn't be here listening to me talk. I wouldn't have this channel, because that's how I became a gamer, playing the games, buying games on sale, buying used games. Games is why we're here. Games is why I'm talking to you about this, because it's a big issue. And if we don't address it now, it's going to get worse. And I know the economy, tariffs, everything sucks, but that's not an excuse for an industry that made $50 billion last year alone to say, hey, games aren't expensive enough. They are. If you're a parent and you're here wondering, how am I going to afford any of these things? Nintendo, I don't know. They have a weird thing where they don't put things on sale. But my advice to you, wait for things to go on sale. Try to stockpile all the cheap older games and settle with that for now. I don't think you should pay $80. Wait for the Steam sales. Wait for the spring sales on the PlayStation Network. Pick up Game Pass. But me personally, I don't think $100, $90, $80, it's not justifiable. And that's really all I have to say. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but that's how I feel. And I'm willing to discuss this down in the comments. Let's get into it. Let's be respectful. And let's talk about it, because it's a big conversation. And it's one that we need to have now. Peace, y'all.